If Bad Bunny being considered Habao is erasure to darker black people, then where exactly are people of mixed race, regardless of their ethnicity, supposed to fall into the American racial context? Especially considering we have a substantial Latino population in the United States today, which is why Bad Bunny is being promoted. So, how is calling him Habao erasure of other people? Let's get into it.
The conversation about Bad Bunny being habao is energy harvesting for Afro-Latinos and the African American community, because there's no accident. It's not an accident to agitate Black people during Black History Month. So instead of being a part of that conversation that has nothing to do with us, how about we think about the solutions for the things in our community? In terms of job creators, who are the job creators and what jobs do we need in our communities? What kinds of professionals do we need to support our wellness, our education? What does infrastructure change look like in Puerto Rico, if you're talking about Puerto Rico, in Panama, ya know I'm Panamanian, in Estados Unidos? Like, what does that look like in terms of being a job creator for the Black community? What are the needs of us right now? What could change our lived experience right now? Let's think about that. In addition, what are the needs for cross-cultural Black solidarity with Afro-Latinos, African Americans, continental Africans? Who else? What are our needs? What do we need to understand about each other, and what's kind of holding us back from that? So rather than having that conversation about this white man and whether he fits in and how he fits in, because he don't, we are utility to him, because if he can't use us, we wouldn't even be in the room. So instead of that, how can we better serve each other as a diaspora, and what does that look like for us?
So I want to respond to the clip from the creator that mentioned that calling Bad Bunny Habao is erasure to Afro Latinos. And I wanted to respond to this because I found this to be a very interesting perspective. And a lot of things that this creator says I find to be very interesting because I think she's actually the exact same ethnic makeup as me. She's like African American and Latino with like two black parents, or she is like Caribbean as well. I don't know, but I think I'm like 70% sure she's multi-ethnic. Regardless, I know for a fact she also has Panamanian roots. So that's very cool. So I'd be supporting her. I don't agree with everything she says, but I'm gonna support her regardless because, we have similar messages. So it's like obviously I'm gonna support her page, even though I don't have to agree with everything. And I've always said that I'm the type of person that there are a lot of content creators that I only agree with 60% or 70% of what they say, but I can still like you, you know what I mean? Or I may not have the same worldview as you, but I can still like you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a hating bitch. I don't need you to like have the exact same points of view as me. So there's a lot of things that this particular content creator has said that I don't necessarily agree with, but I still like her perspectives and I think her voice is important. So that's why I support her channel. So shout out to her. So I just wanted to preface that. So, I'm going to be including some examples of what I always consider to be Habao. And then I'm going to also read from Google and Reddit about some people giving their perspectives of it as well. And I feel like when it comes to that term, it's interesting because there are a lot of terms that are used in Spanish speaking countries to describe people racially or even just phenotypically wise that are just not used in the United States. Like people know the typicals like, oh, moreno, this and that, like, but they don't know like ones that are very specific to maybe certain countries or to certain mixes, you know what I mean? Same thing in the Caribbean. There's certain specific words for certain mixed people, or people who are mixed with European and African versus Asian and African, you know what I mean? It gets real complicated. So a lot of it is based off of phenotype, and I think people don't not as that people don't understand that, but I often hear people saying things like, oh, out there they go mostly by culture and ethnicity, and it's like, yeah, people do go based off your nationality depending on the context. Like if you're from another country, they're going to call you the nationality that you're from, but people also use descriptive terms to describe people's phenotypes and describe and categorize them based on that as well. Same thing like in the United States. And that's why on my channel I just reference people as being light skinned, and I don't really get into the nitty gritty of ethnicity and, racial makeup and things like that, because when I say light skinned in the context that I'm speaking about, you know what I'm talking about. People are not confused. People will play coy, but they know exactly who I'm talking about. Nobody gets in my comment section confused about who I'm talking about. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. The only people who are confused are the people who want to be. And even in my neighborhood, I mostly grew up in a Latino neighborhood, and I always went to school in neighborhoods that were mostly Latino. So yeah, like people still call themselves light skinned, and even walking around, if they talking about like a Puerto Rican or Dominican or something, they're like, oh, that light skin. You know what I mean? Like, oh, people will reference people based on their ethnicity as well. And also you have a lot of multi ethnic people. But people still use descriptive terms, you know what I mean? So I always think that's interesting that people try to act like they'll try to downplay like something that I do, like talking about things that light skinned people deal with. But it's like light skinned people are all throughout the African diaspora. This is a group that been here prominent. You know exactly who I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, ain't nobody confused. And so now I did want to start talking about some of the terms that are used in Latin America to describe like light skinned people of African descent, and 𝙎𝙘 is one of those terms. But the interesting thing about it is that it's not a term that's really used in the United States, because personally I didn't grow up hearing that at all. I heard that term either like online or in the media or maybe on TV, maybe from old people. I don't know where I heard that term, but I've heard it, but it's not used consistently. So when I heard her use it in this video, that's why I wanted to make it. I wanted to make this video. I was like, oh, I've heard that term before and I know exactly what she's talking about, but I don't hear that term being used in the United States. So that was another reason why I thought it's interesting that she's saying that people shouldn't be calling him that, because I don't know where these conversations are being taken place. But anyway, whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of why I disagreed with her perspective, because it's like I actually definitely feel like he would be 𝙎𝙘. So it's like, why is it wrong to call him that, and how is that erasure? But at the same time, it's like you gotta apply it in the cultural context. Like, American people are not automatically categorizing him as that, because there's actually a lot of confusion for American people on how to categorize somebody like Bad Bunny. They know he's Puerto Rican, they know he's of the Afro-Caribbean diaspora, but racially a lot of people would not know how to interpret him, because in the United States it's a racial binary system, and very obviously he does not fit into one racial binary. So even in the United States, people tend to oversimplify the experiences, the racial and ethnic experiences of racially ambiguous people, despite where they come from, and they'll just whittle it down just to their ethnicity, and be like, oh, well, you're just Cuban or you're just Moroccan or whatever. And it's racially inaccurate, because these are nationalities and territories. These are not races or ethnicity. So it's complicated, because you have a situation where race and ethnicity and nationality is being used interchangeably and being used in a flat way, but they don't mean the same thing. So you have, it's just confusing. I don't want to get all into it, but this is literally what we do in ethnic studies. It's the same reason for why it's getting confusing, that you have the I hate to use these terms, but I will for the sake of conversation. You have the quote unquote like ADOS, Black Americans, and then you also have people who are a product of the transatlantic slave trade from Jamaica, Trinidad, Dominican Republic, Brazil. It gets confusing, but when you have a term like quote unquote black, it gets flat, because you can have a black person from Mississippi who's lived, their lineage has been there hundreds of years, but then you also have a person who looks exactly like them, dark skin from Brazil, and they move to the United States. Now they become black too, but then on the census they're technically Latino, but then they don't even speak Spanish because they speak Portuguese. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's too confusing, and the whole system is completely inaccurate. We can even get into North Africans. A lot of North Africans literally have the same phenotype as Latinos, but I also noticed that on the census, North Africans are considered to be white. Nobody would, when I'm not going to say nobody, but in the context of race, people will racialize North Africans as being Arab when they're not Arab. They're Amazigh, and most of them are Amazigh, and that's an indigenous group in Africa, but they're not really included in the African diaspora. But if you look on the U.S. Census, if you're from West Africa, you are considered black, but if you're from North Africa, you're considered white, but the North Africans look like Puerto Ricans and Cubans. It's just super confusing. So yeah, I'm really passionate about this, because I just feel like the United States has made a hot ass mess for mixed and racially ambiguous people from other countries, as well as the people who lineage is in North America. So yeah, it's just, we're all victims of a system that was not created for us.
Why does curly hair representation matter at the halftime show? Bad Bunny is a halftime performer at the Super Bowl this year. For a long time, curly hair has been seen as unattractive or unprofessional, and his performance proves otherwise. In my opinion, I think that someone as influential as Bad Bunny embracing his natural curls serves as a message to others that they can be themselves and also succeed. Are Cardi B and Bad Bunny Afro-Latinos? Bad Bunny is from Puerto Rico, which has a mix of African, Taino, and European heritage due to colonization. Cardi B is both Dominican, which has a similar composition as Puerto Rico, and Trinidadian, which is primarily of East Indian and African descent. In my opinion, I think they should be able to identify in the way that makes them feel the most true to themselves.
So I got braids for the first time, and it's been such an interesting experience for my identity, because going into it, all I could think about is, oh my God, what is everybody else going to think? Because my brother had dreads for 7 years, and he would always get comments for cultural appropriation. And I'd ask him, how do you deal with that? And he always said, who cares? The people that are saying that are usually more ignorant rather than curious, because if they just asked, they would know that he's half black. So I tried to keep that in the back of my head when I got these, but it was hard because I'd go into the grocery store and I'd think, oh my God, my cashier is probably thinking I'm just some white girl trying to be black. Like, does she know that I'm mixed? Or I'd hop on the bus and be like, oh gosh, I hope everyone here knows that I'm allowed to have this hairstyle. Like, I have the texture and the culture to back it up. And I couldn't get that panic out of my head. And so I just tried to keep that little voice saying, who cares? You are allowed to have this hairstyle, and who cares what everybody else thinks? And so after the first couple of weeks, it finally started settling in that I'm not culturally appropriating. I'm finally stepping into my culture. And I'm not trying to be more black, but I am trying to present more mixed. And I think that this hair brought that side out of me. And I didn't realize that I was missing it so much, because after a while I was like, why haven't I been getting braids this whole time? They're so fun and long and easy to manage. But I also started to feel more like me. And I started to feel like that in between of these two cultures that I've been struggling with my whole life. And I still don't have the words yet. I still need to take this to therapy and find the right way to describe how I'm never enough of both, but how a hairstyle brought me closer to the middle. So I'll probably be getting braids in the future, but I'm about to take these bad boys out. So just wanted to share that thought, that who knew a hairstyle could make me reflect on my identity even more.
Puerto Ricans do not really fit into any of the current categories neatly. There is currently a large debate going on in the mainland USA that argues if Puerto Ricans should be classified as black or not, with most of the arguments stemming from the discussion of Puerto Rican contribution to the creation of hip-hop and an evaluation of if Puerto Rican rappers and celebrities can use a certain offensive word that is tied to the African-American identity and history. By outdated, unscientific, and racially motivated concepts such as the one-drop rule, all Puerto Ricans would be classified as black, as unlike Cubans, Puerto Ricans are extremely evenly mixed, and it's next to impossible to find a 100% European Puerto Rican or a 100% African Puerto Rican. While we discuss the results of average Puerto Ricans above, there are indeed Puerto Ricans with a larger African contribution than average. Puerto Ricans from Loiza, who average 48% of sub-Saharan African ancestry, typically have this component as their largest ancestral component, while a Puerto Rican from San Juan may not share that. Obviously, the world does not operate like this in 2025, and often a racial classification of an individual comes down to two factors. The first factor is that the individual himself considers himself to be a part of a certain group, and if the members of said group agree with the individual's classification. Considering the Puerto Rican genetic profile, it is possible for two siblings from the same parents to inherit two different phenotypes that may be viewed as different races by other people. So whether or not Puerto Ricans can be classified as black would depend on if the person himself identifies as black, and if the said person's resulting phenotype would be that which would cause the rest of the black community to accept the said individual as black.
So anyway, going back to what I was saying about Bad Bunny being considered habal. So this might be a controversial take, but I don't really care. So I actually think there's good and bad things about having all of these different descriptive terms to describe people and to categorize them. Not saying that it's good or that we should categorize humans like that, but considering the social situation we're in right now, as people of color, we can use these tools to better understand each other and understand where people are coming from. Not to divide, not to, hierarchically categorize, not any of that, just to simply be able to understand other people's lens and how they might have experienced the world racially. I think these terms can be used for that, and it doesn't have to be interpreted as, oh, one is better than the other, or we're pitting one against each other, or one is separating. It doesn't have to be that. It's just simply descriptive. These types of terms can contribute to the hair texture you have, your nose structure, your skin tone, at least in Latin America. So all of these different factors based on your phenotype can impact the terms people call you. So it does get really toxic really fast, and I want to make that very clear, because you do have people with a lot of internalized anti-indigenous and anti-black sentiments, and they will take this stuff too far. But it doesn't always have to be negative. I think sometimes it's just like, descriptive. So I think that can be a good thing about it, but you just have to deal with it in a healthy way, and it doesn't have to be like, I don't know, it doesn't have to be weird. It just, yeah. So I'm not technically against all of these terms, obviously, because I even use some of them on my channel. So like in the United States, there's some like like red bone, yellow bone, I don't know. There's not that many like modern ones, but yeah, those are ones that are popular in North America. Dominicans call people like 𝙤𝙤𝙢𝙢𝙢𝙢, and so like that would be somebody who would be considered like a yellow bone in the United States. Indio, there's also terms like in Central America, sometimes they call people Zombo. Some people that are Indio in the Caribbean will be considered Zombo in Central America. But in the United States, people don't use that term because of the racial connotation based on the Jim Crow stereotypes. So it's actually very interesting, and people will try to, downplay and be like, oh my god, they just over there talking about being light skinned. And it's like, if you're put into a situation where Europeans racialize your people and they force you in these categories, and then you decide, well, I'm gonna learn about your categories and use it to educate and empower my own people, I don't see how that's a problem. Like, you don't have to make it weird unless you make it weird. That's how I feel. But yeah, these are important conversations to have. I'm not saying these are good or that you should over identify with these terms, but this is just the real world. So anyway, going back to Bad Bunny. So like that all being said, I feel like if in the United States there was awareness of terms and, different terms to describe people who have a similar phenotype to Bad Bunny, maybe it would be easier for people to contextualize his racial experience based on him being a Puerto Rican man of mixed descent, and depending on what part of Puerto Rico he comes from, I'm not exactly sure, but like the part of the country that your family comes from, that can impact how you look. Like all throughout the Caribbean, same thing in different parts of Brazil, different parts of, Central America as well, same thing in Mexico. So, all of that stuff contributes to your racial identity, your history, to why your family is mixed the way it is, whatever it is. So these are important conversations. So again, the whole calling people or descripting people based on their phenotype and things, I'm not saying it has to be good or something that people over identify with, but it does contribute to people's family history in the world, racial experience in the modern context, and their cultural experience as well. So I don't think it has to be a bad thing. And now I want to address some people calling Bad Bunny white, and the original commentator saying that it's erasure to Afro-Latinos to call Bad Bunny 𝙎𝙝𝙧. With certain Americans gaslighting Bad Bunny and Latinos who look like him by saying that he's a white Latino and, he's only using black people as props. And I've seen this rhetoric going around here and there, like sprinkles of it, but I didn't pay it much attention. I've also seen sprinkles of a few people punching the air, fighting with their self, talking about, oh, Bad Bunny is not Afro-Latino, stop saying that he's black, blah blah blah. Mind you, I have not seen one person call Bad Bunny Afro-Latino, say that he's black. I've never seen that before. If y'all have seen it, correct me. And I'm talking about on a prominent place, not some random corner of X somewhere. I'm talking about on major platforms. I have not seen anybody calling him black or Afro-Latino, so I didn't understand where that rhetoric was coming from. But actually, I do understand where that rhetoric is coming from. The rhetoric is coming from certain individuals in the African diaspora, unfortunately, and this is a cross-continental issue that we're seeing. This is not just specific to one ethnicity. This is not really even specific to one skin tone either. I'm not gonna just scapegoat the dark skins for this, because it's not just them. Everybody's sitting around talking shit, even other light skinned people, but I won't even get into that. But yeah, I see that there are certain individuals who mixed people just doing things and getting attention triggers them, and they think that mixed people getting attention or a mixed person getting praise for their music is an automatic erasure of themselves or automatic slight towards them, when it really has nothing to do with them. It's like Bad Bunny being elevated or getting a halftime show performance, or his album doing really well and the public really liking his music and really appreciating what he's doing and putting out, that has nothing to do with a slight towards anybody else. So I don't even understand where that rhetoric came from. So I only saw a few like trolls saying this, honestly, so again, I didn't really give it much attention. But again, I really like this content creator, the original one who made the video, but she has a lot of things about mixed Latinos that I just kind of feel like were strange. And I understand she's more of like the, black centered mentality, and I agree with that. But I also do feel like, and I know for a fact, because I'm living proof of that mixed people are part of the Afro-Latino diaspora. So it's like there's no reason to come at people like Bad Bunny for no reason and say, oh my God, we only have this in the room for props, he's not how about. And it's like, who's even saying that? Like, it's not even necessary. It just makes us look like haters, honestly. And honestly, in the past, in the 2000s, that's what they always used to say, like, oh, if you complained about like colorism or you talked about a disparity, they'll either trying to say that you're bringing an American mindset and that you let Americans brainwash you, or they'll tell you that you're just jealous, or that that you're just insecure or whatever. It was just like mad gaslighting. So it's just like, I don't think it's necessary to bring that up when somebody's not problematic. Like Bad Bunny be showing love to everybody. I haven't heard him say nothing problematic. He shows love to all his Puerto Rican roots. I feel like he does respect Afro-Latino and black culture and even black people in America. I haven't seen him or heard him do anything, so I just feel like some of that rhetoric isn't necessary. But I've noticed this a lot of times when a lot of Latino or just mixed celebrities are getting popular. Here come the unnecessary hate and the think pieces about, oh, this person just uses black people for props, or they're only connecting with their blackness now. Like, it's always the usual suspects pulling these same tricks out of their hat, trying to rain on the parade. And that's kind of the problem. It's like, I agree with you that we should be addressing colorism on both sides of the continent and the Caribbean, that there is an issue with anti-blackness and anti-indigenous sentiments within the Latin countries and diaspora. I completely agree with everything that she up there talking about, but yeah, I can't agree with the unnecessary coming from mixed people all the time. I just feel like that's mad unnecessary and it's counterproductive as well, especially when the person is not problematic, and when we have a bunch of coons of all skin tones and backgrounds running around all parts of the African diaspora. It's like, why don't we focus on them instead of worrying about how Bad Bunny racially identifies? It just doesn't really make sense to me, especially with everything going on.
I would also appreciate if you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are not already and the content resonates with you. Welcome, as well as making sure you hit the bell for notifications so you'll be informed every time I upload a new video or go live. I'd also encourage you to check out my Patreon, where you can access old and exclusive content, as well as having early access to new uploads. That will be linked in the description box below.
So now I want to address what she mentioned about calling Bad Bunny how about being erasure to Afro-Latinos. So I wanted to read this little Google AI response and then tie that into my commentary about why I think this is an interesting take, but I don't agree with it. So Google AI, when I asked what does how about mean in Puerto Rico, it says, in Puerto Rico, how about is a colloquial term used to describe a person of mixed race, typically African and European, who has light skin but also possesses distinct African features such as curly or kinky hair. Here are the key details regarding the term. Phenotype. A habao generally has a fair or light complexion, but not typically the hair texture or facial features of a person of pure European descent. See, this is very distinct because me personally, I feel like the term habao mostly focuses on the correlation between the skin tone and the hair texture. that's just me. That's how I always interpreted it. Like somebody who is like one way in the face, but then has very kinky hair. This is gonna be. I hate to make this connection, but I made a video one time about Glorilla, and I'm gonna try to link it somewhere. But I talked about how in the past, like the older generations, like pre-boomer, I'm talking about old light-skinned people, older people, not just light-skinned people, black people in general. In the United States, if you were like light skinned but you had kinky hair, they would say, "Oh, you have a waste of light skin." All people would say that. So I'm gonna be honest with you. From how I interpret it in my multi-ethnic context, is that somebody who is halal would be somebody who in the South during that time would have been told that. That's not the best connection I could make, but I just had to put it in terms of the United States to get people to kind of like understand what type of phenotype we're talking about here, and how like we can talk all day about how Latin America, configurates people racially and breaks people up, but it's like really the same mentalities were going on in the United States as well. They just weren't as many names for it. But anyway, so Google goes on to say hair and features. It often refers to someone with blonde, light brown, or reddish hair that is very curly or textured, sometimes called pelo malo, which translates into bad hair. And, I don't have to explain that. Any person of African descent anywhere knows what that means. I'm gonna need to make a whole pelo malo video soon. Shit, I might have to make a whole playlist of videos just ranting and raving about that. I basically already have, but I was talking about it from the United States context. I do have a lot of videos that talk about natural hair from the Afro-Latino context as well, but I'm gonna have to make some specific videos just about the whole pelo malo thing and the whole concept of having a hair texture, but you also have a certain skin tone or phenotype as well. That's a whole weird thing. So yeah, let me know when y'all want some more videos about that, because I'll definitely be speaking more about this in the future. It is used to describe a specific 54 mixed race appearance, and is often used to describe light-skinned people with African ancestry. I don't know what the 54 means. But anyway, whatever. So it says, for context, while it can be a neutral descriptor of appearance, it can sometimes be used in a way that reflects colorism. I would say it more so reflects texturism because of the example I gave earlier. And when I've heard people reference somebody as being halal, I mostly heard them reference it in context to their hair texture, and a few of those times the context was not positive. So in my opinion, it's more so focused on hair texture, and that's why I use that connection to the American South, because I feel like sometimes people use that term in a similar way. But I won't get into that right now. But yeah, so it says the term is also used in other Caribbean nations like Cuba and the Dominican Republic with similar meanings. So now that I've provided that extra context, I think that it's now easier to see why I disagree with the original commentator mentioning that it's erasure to call Bad Bunny Habal. I guess her logic is that she doesn't consider Bad Bunny to be Habal, and that she considers him to be a white guy, apparently. I mean, that's what she said in her video. I disagree, because I actually ironically used Bad Bunny in a thumbnail that I made that was actually literally talking about light-skinned people with kinky coily hair. And I used him in the thumbnail to talk about his hair, and literally to talk about this concept, because clearly this is something that I can relate to, because I made multiple videos about it. So anyway, and quiet as it's kept, a lot of light-skinned people can relate to this. They just don't talk about it because they've either been scared out of it, or they don't think it's a real problem for whatever reason. But yeah, it's not as uncommon as people think. But yeah, so it's funny that she's saying, "Oh, Bad Bunny is a white man," because I've literally used him on thumbnails for the exact same reasons. So obviously I don't agree with that. But yeah, I've seen his hair grown out. Bad Bunny has kinky hair, like not like super coily or anything like that, but he has like type 4 hair almost. And it's like people will look at him like, that's a lie. No, he doesn't. No, it's because y'all used to seeing him all glistened up in magazine covers with a bunch of gel and got to bleed and shit all in his hair. But when you have type 4 hair, you know, your hair can be like transformers, like it can do a lot of different things. So I've seen pictures of him, which is why I use him in that thumbnail. I saw pictures of him before with his hair like out, and it's like, it's really like kinky and everything. Not kinky, but you get what I mean? Like, it is kinky. Like, you see, now I gotta like watch my words because these people are just like on it like that. But anyway, yeah, my point is just that he obviously does have significant enough African ancestry to where his hair presents like that. And even his features, to me, he looks very obviously mixed to me. Like, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm used to being around Latinos and I'm used to being around light-skinned black people. I don't know what it is, but he looks very obviously Puerto Rican to me, very obviously mixed. I don't think he would go anywhere in Latin America, and definitely not North America, and be perceived as a white man. Maybe some parts of very, very dark skinned parts of like Latin countries in Central or South America, but nowhere would they really see him as like a straight up white guy. And then in different countries, they have more leeway with how mixed you can be but still get away with being white. And then even then, you have a lot of these people who gotta fry, dye, and lay their hair to the side, and you know, wear all this light makeup and get all their nose all pinched up and everything, all in effort to try to distance themselves from mixedness in order to be closer to you know, Hispanic European adjacency. So I think that's very funny. It's like in the United States, people wag their finger at light skinned and mixed black people and they say, oh, you have nearness to whiteness, you have privilege XYZ, despite the fact that in the United States, if literally historically, even if you had a 1/16 drop in some shit, that was even still too black for them. But in Latin America, you have a bunch of people who are mixed race who are trying to find nearness to Europeanness, and they're already mixed. Like, it's a really sad situation. So it's like, no matter where people are, they're like chasing what's whiter and lighter than them. It's unfortunate. I'm not saying that all people or even the majority of people are doing that. I'm just saying I've literally known people who do this for real, and then you see they before and after pictures and you're like, who the hell is that? But the person was already mixed or racially ambiguous. So it's just like, I'm just saying you should keep that in mind. Like, just because somebody presents a certain way and you may think like they on some grass is greener type of shit and have it easier based on the way they present, you know, you never know what experience people had or what they had to deal with in their life to where they maybe feel like, okay, I gotta wear my hair straight, or I'm not gonna present with this outfit because I don't want to look too urban, or I don't want to be, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things mixed people have to deal with. So I think to just dismiss people and be like, oh, you're white, and know that that's not accurate to the society we live in, I just feel like that's gaslighting. And it's like, it's not cool because people do that to Afro-Latinos too, and try to say you crazy if you talk about racism or literal mistreatment, little discrimination, people acting funny towards you. I mean, I see it in my neighborhood, and my dad even complains about it, shit he experienced in the day-to-day and even growing up. So it's like, I'm not going to turn a blind eye to that, and I'm not disagreeing that that is a problem, but yeah, we're in the United States and it's a different dynamic. So yeah, I just think that it's an interesting conversation, and of course, as we always say, it's nuanced as well. And what I find interesting about the woman who called Bad Bunny white, what I find interesting about her mentality is that it ex- highlights an interesting contradiction in Hispanic racial discourse that's happening online and even in person, because sometimes when you say certain things about anti-blackness or colorism or just even general racism, some Latinos, particularly non-black, non-indigenous ones, will gaslight you and say, oh, you're bringing an American mindset to the conversation, you're letting Americans gaslight you, blah 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 blah, whatever, even though the Americas were developed through the same colonial system by the same Europeans. You could bring up territories, languages, and all the rest of the semantics. All of these places were colonized by Europeans that are all related to each other far back enough. So, although I generally see that as a gaslighting tactic, I kind of feel like in this situation, that kind of applies, because if you ask me, I kind of feel like in this instance, what she's doing is what some people would call, quote unquote, one dropping. I think she's, quote unquote, one dropping Bad Bunny into whiteness. And I'm saying that because to me, I think that Bad Bunny appears to be a very obvious mixed person, especially considering his hair texture. He looks very obviously mixed to me. We can sit up here and argue percentages. I think that that's completely unnecessary and anti-mixed to an extent, especially when you can clearly look at somebody and see that they're mixed. So I think that she's one dropping him into whiteness by saying that he's a white man. I mean, he's not seen as a white man or perceived as one ethnically or racially in the United States, and in Latin America, he wouldn't be either. I would not look at him and consider him a white Puerto Rican. We know that white Puerto Ricans exist despite what some people may believe. I do not see Bad Bunny as white. I don't see him as non-mixed. I don't see him being able to go to certain countries and be seen as a white person. Now, I'm not arguing that he's black or that he would be seen as black. I'm not arguing the Afro-Latino thing either. I'm not arguing for or against it. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm simply arguing about the '𝙎𝙬 term. But yeah, I do believe that or know that Bad Bunny is a mixed person and clearly is a clearly Latino man. He's not perceived as white. So I just feel like she's one dropping him into whiteness. I just feel like that's weird and gaslighty. And people do that to more Afro dominant mixed Afro Latinos, and I feel like that's corny. So I'm not gonna support it with Bad Bunny just because he's lighter than me. So yeah, that's just kind of how I feel about it. And the interesting thing about using terms like 𝙎𝙬 is that it connects somebody like Bad Bunny who phenotypically presents the way that he is. It connects him to his ethnic and racial history of being a mixed person, even if he is more Euro dominant. His music, his style, the way he raps, the stuff he talked about, his performance, the part of Puerto Rico he's from, all of that impacts his heritage, his lineage, and his indigenous and African roots. So calling him by that descriptive term acknowledges all parts of him, and yeah, it kind of does poke fun at the fact that he is probably more European descendant, but it also points out the fact that he has significant African ancestry as well, to the extent that his hair looks like that. He has like type 4A hair. I mean, we could argue about features, but the dude has kinky curly hair. So yeah, again, I'm not trying to blackify him or anything like that, but he's clearly a mixed person. So I just feel like there's a lot of nuance in that conversation, and why I say that she's kind of bringing an American mindset to it and kind of one dropping him is because like we have to talk about people in the context in which they live. Same thing with the Tyler situation. Bad Bunny is a Puerto Rican man. We know Puerto Rico is a part of the United States, but he, to my knowledge, lives in Puerto Rico still. He is not Americanized at all. He comes from this island. Why call him a white man? You know what I mean? I just feel like that's like, it's not like he's like some super Americanized dude and then he just started making like a reggaeton or something like that. Like, no. So yeah, I just feel like that's kind of erases his heritage and mixedness as well by dismissing him as white, and it whiteifies him and it goes along with the American project of assimilating white people away from their ethnic roots and assimilating them into white Americanness. So even if he was a white Puerto Rican dude, I mean, still, how is that beneficial for either group to assimilate more people into whiteness? And I mean, especially as Cubans, like that's the huge issue that's happening right now. We actually have white people over there. These people are real life white, but the problem is that they're coming over here and seeing themselves as white Americans, and they completely psychologically disconnect from POC Latinos and people in different situations, other immigrants, and there's a lot of historical reasons for that as well, because systematically white Cubans were brought into white Americanness. But I'm not going to go into that rant because that's a video for another day. But I'm just saying it doesn't end well for anybody to assimilate a whole bunch of Latinos into white American culture. It's just not a benefit. So it's interesting to me because in one breath, a lot of people, regardless of ethnicities, will complain about anti-blackness within the Latin American culture, which I agree with, like I'm saying, obviously. But at the same time, they will look at obvious mixed people and be like, oh, you're white, you look more European dominant, you shouldn't connect with your African roots, you're lying XYZ. And it's just like weird to me. Is and I mean they do that with North American people as well. It's like, do you want mixed people to have respect for their African roots and to see themselves as in reverence and in community with black people or not? It's like you can't have it both ways. So I just find that very interesting. And Bad Bunny's been very vocal about his heritage and his pride, who he is, and his culture and everything like that. So it's not like he's, you know, being two-faced or being fake about it. So I just feel like that commentary was unnecessary, especially because, like I said earlier, nobody is really talking about Bad Bunny's race, skin tone, ethnicity, anything. I'm sorry, like I just have to be honest with you, the only people I hear commenting on Bad Bunny's race and ethnicity are black women that are American, either American or Americanized Afro-Black women, Afro-Latina black women. So it's just like, I don't understand what this Discord is about, honestly, and I don't understand why we always do this. Because it's just not, it makes us look bothered, and it's not productive. Like, yeah, that's just how I feel. And I also find it interesting that we're having this conversation about Bad Bunny being considered halal, because I actually made a video a few months back when I was talking about, I think, light skin not determining your hair texture, or something about texturism and skin tone. I don't remember what the video was about, honestly. I've made a lot of videos at this point. Ranting about similar things. It's all starting to smush together now. But yeah, I'll put the thumbnail on the screen. And I don't even think I commented at all on Bad Bunny in the video, but I put him on the thumbnail because I had seen a picture of him recently and saw that he had kinky curly hair, and I was like surprised because I didn't know his hair texture was like that, because when he first came out his hair was cut really short, which there's something to that. A lot of people with kinky hair, a lot of men, a lot of Afro-descendant men in the Caribbean as well as in Latin America, they will cut their hair very short. Same thing in Africa too, actually. They do this to the girls. It's the same thing. Cut their hair very short if it's curly to avoid the texture, or keep it really brushed and things like that. I'm not saying he did that for that reason. I'm just, now that I'm recalling it, I think that is interesting that he did have his hair cut really short when he came out, and now he's growing it out. He's really embracing his curls. He's doing a lot of looks, you know, all creamed up and Spanish poppied up, and you know what I mean, like all glistening and everything, curls is papping and shit. Like, I noticed that, and I do find that very interesting, and I'm very much here for the natural hair journey. But anyway, so I made a video about that, and I put him in the thumbnail. So I just find it ironic that now we're having this conversation in regards to his hair texture and racial makeup and all that type of stuff. But I also do want to give acknowledgement to the fact that I have heard some people use the term halal in kind of like a backhanded type of way, kind of like in a way to, like, I don't know, kind of talk about the person's hair texture. That's why I said that I feel like is more connected to texturism, or the hair texture of the person. It doesn't inherently have to be bad, but you know what I mean. Like, it's more connected to the person having kinky hair rather than like being like colorist, in the sense that it elevates light skin over a different skin tone. I think it's more so about people's negative connotations with kinky curly Afro-descendant hair, and then having these preconceived notions about what type of people possess that hair texture, or what skin tone typically has that hair texture. Because of the society we've lived in, Afro hair has been hidden on all different hair textures. So it's the same reason why when there's a dark skinned person who has really loose hair, people are surprised and they act very ignorant about that, because they have assumptions about what hair textures are associated with skin tone, and it's just really toxic and associated with anti-African beliefs and all this type of stuff. And I actually have a lot of dark skinned people in my family that have loose hair. Some of my siblings are like that, so I've seen how people are, and yeah, y'all are just weird. But anyway, so my point with bringing that up is that I have heard people use halal in a like a backhanded type of way, and this kind of, to me, kind of connects to another term I've talked about, or another like saying I've discussed on this channel before. And I don't like to bring up these negative blasts from the past, but there is a term that old school African Americans used to use to talk about light skinned people with kinky hair, or light skinned people with African features. And it just shows how no matter where Afro-descendant people, black people are, they're gonna have the same type of mentalities towards stuff, because there's literally a term that has the same like general attitude to it. And I talked about this. I'm not saying repeat this, I'm not saying we should revamp this or anything, but I literally heard older people say, and it's not just light-skinned people that say this, but this term was generally directed at light-skinned people. So they would say, oh, that person is a waste of light skin. And basically they would be saying that about a person who was light skinned but had kinky hair and or African features. So I talked about that in my Glorilla video. And I'll have all these videos linked in the description box below. And if I don't, I just forgot. It's nothing personal. um, but yeah, so I'm gonna be honest with you. When I have heard people use the term halal to describe somebody, I kind of felt like they were using that term in a similar type of attitude, like trying to be like kind of condescending to the person, or like I said, backhanded, like, oh, that person is, XYZ, kind of saying it in that way. And it just reminded me of how older people would use that term. And it just shows, it's like, yeah, y'all have these weird ideas about what skin tones and hair texture should be associated with certain skin tones, and it's just very toxic. And yeah, we just need to get out of these mindsets as black and Latin people, because it just doesn't benefit anybody, and it's very toxic, and everybody's suffering, not just one group or one skin tone or one hair texture. And I think that the conversation is heavily centered around, oh, this rhetoric or these ideas affect this specific group of people, or they hurt this group of people with this hair texture or who look this way. And that's not necessarily true. It's hurting all Afro-descendant people regardless of their racial makeup. I mean, you literally got people who are 75% European, the rest, African or whatever, down in Latin America, even in North America, dealing with texturism and hair problems. Like, this been going on for decades and generations. I've been talking about this. I'm sorry, I hate that I gotta expose light-skinned people, not just light-skinned people, but mixed people. But this has been happening for a very long time. And then there's this narrative that's like, mixed people and light-skinned people don't gotta deal with this, that we got silky hair, that everybody's just jealous of our hair. It's just really weird. It's just like, do y'all talk to anybody who's different than y'all? Like, it's just, I don't understand how that's beneficial and why you would want to continue to perpetuate that narrative. But for some reason, there's people who have a vested interest in continuing this mentality, and it's just weird. So yeah, I feel like I have a unique perspective on this, so that's why I be speaking on these things. I'm not trying to project like, oh, feel insecure about XYZ, or this is what they used to say about people with kinky hair. I'm not trying to like keep these things going, but I think it's an important conversation to talk about, because a lot of people are acting like this didn't exist, and it does. Like, and this is also why it's important for black and Latin people who come from mixed backgrounds and come from mixed families to discuss these experiences and the real stuff that's going on, to help each other and to educate the rest of the diaspora, and to not continue to villainize us and use us as scapegoats because we're sitting up in the same society as you, dealing with the same issues, just in a different font. So I don't understand what the bickering about phenotype is about. It's dumb. Grow up. But yeah, I think more of us should talk about our experiences with texturism, Futurism, colorism, whatever it may be. And this whole like dismissing everything and saying, oh, well, I'll never have it as bad as XYZ, or, as whatever woman, I'll never experience whatever. I don't feel like that's productive at all. And it's like, speak for yourself. If you don't have those experiences, God bless you. That's wonderful. I don't really believe you, but if you didn't, that's great. But I just don't see how it's productive to act like this is not happening with other people. You know what I mean? Like, this is a very real thing. But if you ask the lay person, they would never associate texturism or these associations with hair texture as like being something that light skinned and mixed people struggle with, or think that somebody like Bad Bunny or a woman that has the same phenotype as him, or some of the people that I featured in this video, a lot of y'all, especially in the United States, y'all would hear that they're Hispanic or whatever, and y'all would just assume, oh, they never had hair issues, oh, they got long hair, oh, they never went through XYZ. And that's the toxicity, and it keeps these narratives that are not helpful going. So that's why I'm talking about this stuff. And I think the huge issue is that, I'm just going to be honest with you. I agree with a lot of the stuff that the girl who made this video says. And I think she adds a lot of positivity to the conversation about Afro-Latino identity and all that. But I do think that an issue here is that there's a lot of people who are not mixed. They're not light skinned. They at least are not, they don't have a mixed family that's heavily mixed. They might be admixed, but you know, people who come from generations of mixing, a lot of those people, whether they be in North America or Latin America, they really don't speak on these topics, and they're not dictating stuff for themselves and each other, and they're not the leading charge on these conversations. So we have a lot of people who are speaking for us and dictating stuff for us, and then y'all turn around and just agree to and submit to everything that they say, and that's a huge problem because you're not dictating and controlling your narrative and your image and identity. You're letting other people do it, not to mention nefarious actors who have vendettas that are misplaced. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not saying everybody's doing this to be malicious, but unfortunately, a lot of these people, they do have their own misplaced anger, their own agendas going on here. Yet, I don't see Afro-Latin people or MGN people really giving any pushback or counter narratives to what's being said. And unfortunately, the only people who are going to stick up and defend themselves is usually the ignoramuses who probably already have their own psychological things going on, and they're just looking for a fight. The even killed, educated, self-assured people who know their history, they don't really want to be in this conversation, so they're not really gonna engage. But that's the problem. So there's a lot of like bad actors and crazies, you know, with the loudest mic. So that's just my rant. And let me know what you thought about my perspective as well as the original speaker in the video. Let me know if you've ever heard the term habao or similar terms to describe people with that type of phenotype. I'd love to hear you guys' take on this situation. Thanks for all the support. Peace.